New kid. The shout wasn't kind. It wasn't welcoming. It was sharp, almost mocking, like the first warning bell before a storm. Heads turned all at once, and whispers rushed through the hallway like wildfire. Every pair of eyes landed on the girl walking calmly past the lockers. Her name was Amara Johnson. Tall, graceful, with dark brown skin that seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. She walked with the kind of confidence that unsettled people who thrived on weakness. But despite her steady steps, inside, Amara felt the sting of those whispers. She had heard them before, in every school, in every city, wherever she and her dad moved. This was her 5th transfer in 3 years. Her father's work as a traveling nurse meant packing up and leaving whenever a new assignment called. For Amara, it meant always being the outsider, always starting over, and always being tested. She adjusted her worn backpack and kept walking, pretending not to notice the snickers and side eyes. She wasn't here to make friends. She had one goal: to keep her grades up, focus on basketball, and honor the promise she'd made to her late mom, that no matter where life took her, she'd stand tall. But in every school, there was always one person who thought they were untouchable. And at Westbridge High, that person was Chad Miller. Leaning against a locker with his arms crossed, Chad watched Amara with a smirk that made students part like the Red Sea around him. He wasn't just a bully, he was the bully. Star quarterback, son of a wealthy businessman, and a boy who believed the world revolved around him. "Look what we have here," Chad muttered to his buddies, loud enough for Amara to hear. "Another charity case. Bet she won't last a week." Laughter followed. Amara's eyes flicked in his direction, just for a second. Calm, unbothered. Then she looked forward again and kept walking. She'd learned the hard way. Never give bullies the satisfaction of your fear. Still, she felt it, that heavy spotlight. The way the whole hallway seemed to wait for her reaction. But instead of shrinking, she straightened her shoulders. She remembered her mom's words. "Your strength is not in how loud you are, but in how steady you stand." Chad's smirk faltered for the briefest moment. He wasn't used to being ignored. And in that split second, he decided something. This new girl wasn't just going to blend in quietly. No, he was going to make her his next target. What Chad didn't know was that Amara wasn't like anyone he had ever messed with before. And by the end of the week, he'd learned that the hard way. The cafeteria was buzzing that day. Trays clattered, laughter echoed, and the smell of greasy pizza filled the air. For most students, it was just another Tuesday. But for Amara Johnson, it was her first lunch at Westbridge High, and first days were always the hardest. Balancing her tray of food, she scanned the crowded tables. Groups had already formed, the football players taking up half a row, the cheerleaders laughing loudly in the center, the quiet kids hunched together in the corner. Everywhere she looked, there were stares. Curious, judgmental, some even hostile. She spotted an empty table near the back and began walking toward it. But before she could get there, a loud voice rang out across the room. "Hey, new girl." It was Chad Miller. Of course. He was sitting at the center table, his arm draped around a cheerleader, surrounded by his friends. His smirk was wide, his tone dripping with fake sweetness. "Why don't you sit with us?" "Oh, wait." He paused for effect, glancing at his friends. "We don't eat with outsiders." Laughter exploded around the table. Amara froze mid-step. Her eyes lifted, meeting his. The room quieted, just a little, as everyone leaned in to see what she'd do. Without saying a word, she turned away and kept walking. Her pace was calm, her face unreadable. She had heard words like his before, and she wasn't about to waste energy on a boy who thrived on attention. But Chad wasn't finished. As Amara passed his table, his foot shot out, almost casually. In an instant, her tray went flying. Food splattered across the floor, mashed potatoes sliding under sneakers, juice spilling in sticky puddles. A collective gasp rippled through the cafeteria. "Oh no," Chad exclaimed mockingly, holding a hand to his mouth. "Guess the new girl's clumsy." His friends roared with laughter. Phones came out. Some students covered their mouths in shock, others whispered nervously. Everyone knew Chad had crossed the line, but no one ever dared to call him out. Amara bent slowly, setting her backpack down. For a moment, it looked like she might pick up the mess. But then she straightened, turning to face Chad directly. Her voice was calm, steady. "You think you're funny?" The laughter died instantly. No one talked back to Chad. Chad blinked, thrown off. He had expected her to cry, to run, to shrink into herself. Instead, she was staring right at him, eyes sharp as steel, unshaken. Funny, he repeated, forcing a laugh. Sweetheart, I am funny. You just don't get it yet. Amara tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into the faintest smile. No, what I get is that you're scared. The room went dead silent. Scared? Chad Miller? The football star? The self-proclaimed king of the school? His smirk wavered. His friends shifted uncomfortably. And Amara, with nothing but her voice, had turned the entire cafeteria into her stage. This was no ordinary new girl. And Chad had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The silence in the cafeteria was deafening. Dozens of eyes darted back and forth between Amara and Chad, waiting for the explosion. Chad forced a laugh, but his voice cracked. Scared? Of you? Don't make me laugh. He pushed himself up from the table, towering over her. The cheerleader beside him tugged at his arm nervously, but he shrugged her off. He puffed out his chest, playing his role as the untouchable king. What are you going to do about it, new girl? Huh? You going to cry? Or maybe you'll run home and tell Daddy. A few snickers came from his friends, but the room didn't join in this time. Something felt different. The balance had shifted. Amara didn't move. Her voice came out low, calm in a way that rattled Chad more than shouting ever could. You really don't want to know. Her words hung in the air like a warning bell. Chad scoffed, trying to shake off the unease. Oh yeah? Show me then. That was all it took. In one smooth, practiced motion, Amara sidestepped as he shoved toward her. Before anyone could blink, her hand gripped his wrist, twisted, and pressed down in a controlled lock. The cafeteria erupted with gasps. Chad's smirk crumbled into shock. Pain shot up his arm as his knees buckled. Ow, Hey. Let go, he yelped, his voice cracking in a way no one had ever heard before. Phones shot into the air. Dozens of students scrambled to record the scene unfolding before them. The school's biggest bully being pinned down by the new girl like it was nothing. Chad squirmed, his face red, his free hand flailing, but Amara didn't tighten the lock cruelly. She didn't need to. Her grip was precise, controlled, showing power without excess. She leaned in just enough for her voice to reach his ear. Mercy, she whispered. The word hit him harder than the hold. Chad clenched his teeth. His pride screamed at him to resist, but the pain in his arm was real, and the dozens of eyes watching burned into him. He had never been this exposed, this vulnerable. His breath came ragged. Mercy, he croaked, his voice breaking. Please, let go. Amara studied him for a second longer, her expression unreadable. Then, just as smoothly as she had grabbed him, she released his arm. Chad stumbled backward, clutching his wrist, his face pale and humiliated. The cafeteria was electric. Some students burst into cheers, others sat in stunned silence. For years, Chad had been the predator. Now, in less than a minute, he had been brought to his knees. Amara bent, picked up her backpack, and slung it over her shoulder. She looked at Chad one last time, her voice steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. Next time, think before you hurt someone smaller than you. And with that, she walked calmly to the back table, sat down, and opened her juice box, like nothing had happened. The room stayed frozen for a heartbeat before erupting into whispers, cheers, and disbelief. For the first time in Westbridge High history, the bully wasn't the one in control. By the final bell, the story had spread through Westbridge High like wildfire. Every hallway buzzed with whispers. Did you see it? She made Chad beg for mercy. I got the whole thing on video. Want me to send it? The legendary cafeteria takedown had already been clipped, shared, and replayed 100 times on phones under desks. Chad tried to laugh it off. She caught me off guard, that's all. Lucky move. But no one believed him. Everyone had seen the fear in his eyes, the way he had actually begged. Begged. The king of the school, brought down in front of everyone. By the time he reached football practice, his teammates were whispering behind his back. Even the coach gave him a look that wasn't respect, it was disappointment. Meanwhile, Amara sat outside under an oak tree, eating an apple and flipping through her math notes as though nothing had happened. To her, standing up to a bully wasn't about fame or power, it was about survival. She had been forced to fight for respect before. This wasn't new to her. But to everyone else at Westbridge, it was earth-shattering. Hey. Amara looked up. A small, timid voice had broken her focus. Standing a few feet away was Lily, a petite sophomore with messy brown hair and glasses too big for her face. She looked like she wanted to run away and stay at the same time. I just wanted to say thank you, Lily stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Chad's been picking on me for 2 years. Yesterday, he dumped my books in the trash. And today you made him stop. You showed him he's not invincible. Amara tilted her head, studying the girl. Lily's shoulders hunched as if she had spent her whole life trying to make herself smaller, invisible. Amara's tone softened. Bullies only win if you let them. Sometimes, all it takes is standing tall. Tears welled in Lily's eyes. She nodded quickly, almost bowing, before hurrying off. Amara watched her go, her chest tightening. She hadn't planned to be anyone's hero, but if what she did gave someone like Lily courage, maybe it was worth it. That night, the cafeteria video hit social media. By morning, it had thousands of views. Students who had once cheered for Chad now clapped Amara on the back as she walked by. Some whispered her name like she was a legend. But not everyone was celebrating. Chad sat in his car that morning, fists clenched around the steering wheel. His pride was shattered. For the first time in his life, people were laughing at him instead of with him. He replayed the moment in his head over and over. The twist of his arm, the sting of humiliation, the way his own voice cracked when he begged. And the more he thought about it, the more his anger grew. Amara had embarrassed him, in front of the whole school, and Chad Miller wasn't going to let that slide. The next morning, Westbridge High felt different. The hallways, usually filled with Chad's booming laughter and swaggering presence, buzzed with something else, anticipation. Students leaned against lockers, whispering, waiting. Would Chad strike back? Would Amara crumble under the pressure? But when Amara walked in, she didn't look nervous. She carried her books, her head high, her steps steady. If she noticed the stares, she didn't show it. And then came Chad. He rounded the corner with his usual entourage, but something was different. His shoulders weren't quite as straight. His smirk didn't reach his eyes. When he saw Amara, his steps faltered, not enough for everyone to notice, but enough for her. The hallway went silent. Students held their breath, phones ready, waiting for the showdown. But instead of confronting her, Chad looked away. His jaw tightened, his gaze dropped, and he walked past. The silence shattered into gasps and whispers. The king of the school had avoided a fight. The balance of power had shifted. Over the next few days, the ripple only grew. Students who had once lived in fear of Chad began standing up to him. Freshmen stopped cowering when he passed. Teachers noticed he was quieter in class. And through it all, Amara never bragged, never gloated. She simply kept walking with that same calm steadiness, as though nothing had happened. One afternoon, as she packed her bag by the bleachers, a shadow appeared again. Chad, alone this time. No friends, no smirk, just a boy with his pride cracked wide open. He cleared his throat, looking anywhere but her eyes. Listen, about the cafeteria? I was out of line. His voice was quieter than anyone had ever heard it. I'm sorry. Amara studied him for a long moment. She could see the battle in his eyes, ego fighting with regret, fear tangled with shame. Finally, she nodded once. Good, she said. Now use your strength for something better. Protect people. Don't destroy them. Her words weren't harsh, but they cut deep. Chad swallowed hard, nodded, and walked away, more humbled than he'd ever been in his life. That night, something extraordinary happened. Chad sat in his room, scrolling through his phone. A video played again, Amara flipping his arm, forcing him to say mercy. But instead of anger, this time he saw something else, truth. For the first time, he realized how many people he had hurt, how much fear he had built his reputation on. And he hated what he saw. The next week, when Chad spotted Lily, the same girl he used to shove into lockers, struggling with her books, he bent down and helped her. The hallway froze. Lily's eyes went wide, and whispers spread instantly. But Chad didn't care. For once, he wasn't chasing power. He was trying to be better. And though it would take time for trust to build, one thing was certain. Amara's arrival had changed Westbridge High forever. All it took was one new girl refusing to back down. And a bully was forced to learn the hardest lesson of his life.